Good morning, good afternoon, good, not yet.
Now you're live, Luis.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm Luis Eugenio de Souza. I'm president of the World Federation of Public Health Association, and in this meeting, I'm representing the steering committee of the Sustainable Health Equity Movement. And I'd like to welcome you all members of the SHEM movement, all our invitees, and also all the audience that is following this third General Assembly of the SHEM, of the Sustainable Health Equity Movement. So we are struggling since the beginning of the pandemic, of the COVID-19 pandemic, for an equity-based approach to deal with this health and social crisis. We had some achievements, but have many more challenges in the following moments, the following months. So we are beginning the third General Assembly of SHEM, expecting that we can join forces with all social movements, academics, health professionals, to make our voice, our claim for an equity-based approach to health heard by all the communities, all the powerful actors, all the organizations, multilateral organizations, and governments. We think that saying together, working together, we are able to be heard and to change for the better the way the world is facing this health crisis that is interconnected with several other crises, the climate crisis, the social crisis, the economical crisis, and even an ethical crisis. So I'd like to welcome you all and present the agenda of the. I'd like to thank you, the steering committee, for complying me to hold the coordination of this General Assembly of the SHEM. I'd like to ask Egu to share the screen with the agenda to submit it to the members of the Assembly. Thank you, Guto. So after these welcome words, let's see the agenda. The first item is the approval of the agenda, as you can see in the screen. After the agenda, we will broadcast a very short video that was broadcasted during the first General Assembly of SHEM, the launching of the SHEM, a very beautiful video that now it's a important historical document. After that, I will hold the floor to Ms. Laura Dybert, who will present the activities of the SHEM, a short report of SHEM's activities in the last year, from 2021 to 2022 until now. The next item in the agenda will be the presentation of two thematic working groups of SHEM that have been very active in the last period: the global governance and the human rights and equity working groups. The next item would be, I will open the floor for SHEM members who would like to make statements to present it to the Assembly. We have some pre-recorded statements that will be shown to all of you. Next item will be the presentation of the founding members of SHEM. So we have 7 institutions that constitute the SHEM since its beginning: the Latin America Alliance for Global Health, the Health Equity Network of the Americas, the Inter-Academy Partnership, the World Federation of Critical Care Nurses, the World Federation of Public Health Associations, the World Medical Association, and the International Association of National Public Health Institutes. Following, the next item will be the presentation of the SHEM Declaration on Health Equity. And following this, a round table with invitees to debate its main aspects. So we have invited Dr. Nicoleta Dentico, representing the Geneva Global Health Hub, and Dr. Marie Stoder, representing the Planetary Health Alliance.
And particularly because I
After this roundtable, we are going to show you some suggestions, proposals to your consideration, the planning for the next year, and also a launching a call for new steering committee members. And finally, we're going to the conclusions and any other business. So, if there is any suggestions to the agenda, changing items, adding something, I'll be happy to hear from you. As I don't see any, I consider the agenda approved. Thank you very much. So I would like to ask Guto to broadcast now to show us the short video that was launched during the first General Assembly of SHEM. Thank you, Guto. This was the video we presented in the first General Assembly, the launching of the SHEM movement, that we had the presence, the participation of Dr. Tedros, the Director General of WHO, also Dr. Michelle Bachelet on the Human Rights Council of the United Nations at that moment. And we had a very, very, very good discussion that launched the SHEM. Now I'd like to invite Ms. Laura Dybert to present the main activities developed by SHEM from July 2021 to July 2022.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you. Thank you all for participating and joining us today. It is a pleasure to be part of for me, the second annual assembly of SHEM. And I will make a brief presentation of the main activities and achievements carried out during last year, which is from July 2021 to July 2022. So, Guto, if you can skip to the next one, please. Very briefly, because maybe we have newcomers and we would like to share with everybody, and it's always a good opportunity to reinforce our principles. So what does SHEM stand for? At SHEM, we call for a transformational change of global governance and economy to bring together all international actors and efforts towards sustainable equity between and within countries. As you have seen from the video that we just showed, SHEM was founded at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this was the main trigger for the movement to get together. And at that time, the main idea, and I believe that we still have this as a goal for the movement, we have always struggled to emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic with a new world order that is safer and fairer for all, especially the coming generations. Next, please. And also, as you have seen in this short video that we showed, SHEM was founded by some partners, which were core institutions that supported the beginning, but now we are even expanding this. But we have 7 of these founding partners, which are the Inter-Academy Partnership, the World Medical Association, the World Federation of Critical Care Nurses, the International Association of Public Health Institutions, the Health Equity Network of the Americas, and Alianza Latinoamericana de Salud Global. And we have also the World Federation of Public Health Associations, which has always been supporting SHEM in its endeavors. So we take a moment to thank all these partners. And in the coming minutes, you will also be able to see what these institutions have developed throughout the year as well regarding sustainable health equity. Next, please. So now coming to what is the point of this presentation, to present you what we have done over the last year. So next, please, Guto. I will not be too extensive here. We have all this information available on our website, on our social media, and we take this opportunity to invite everyone to learn more about SHEM's work. But I will briefly touch all of the main activities that have been developed. So first of all, as we finished the last year's annual assembly, SHEM received the mandate to create thematic working groups to work specific issues that concern sustainable health equity. And after that, after closing the last year's assembly, SHEM has carried out a survey with its members and partners from its networks, and we have identified 7 main strategic themes that were seen as key to discuss the issue of sustainable health equity. And 7 working groups were proposed to be established. And at this moment, we have 2 groups which are currently operational, which are the Human Rights and Equity and the Global Governance and Equity working groups. You will also have the opportunity to learn a little bit more from the people who are responsible for these groups and who are taking the lead in these initiatives. Next. So starting in February 2021, SHEM has sent a statement to the representatives of countries participating at the COP26 Glasgow meeting. And in this statement, SHEM called on governments, sorry, economic actors and citizens to drastically change ways of production, consumption, and relations so that we could reduce collective emissions by half this decade towards net zero emissions by 2050. And we have the whole statement available on our website, so please feel free, and we invite you all to access this information. Next. We also submitted a statement to the presidency of the 76th UN General Assembly. And at this opportunity, SHEM asked the topic of sustainable health equity to be considered in the deliberations of the meetings. And also that sustainable development goals and its targets, actually SHEM proposed that they could not be achieved without political and financial commitment. And SHEM also demanded that we have a paradigm shift envisioned by the 2030 agenda, and that it be fully embraced and financed with the greatest generosity by all member states of the UN. Next. SHEM also submitted a statement to G20 leaders in October 2021 when they met in Italy, and calling them to act for funding healthy and sustainable recovery from the pandemic. Also, SHEM also highlighted that the previous commitment made by the G20 to allocate 75 billion funds to pandemic prevention was not fulfilled. And SHEM wanted to exhort leads to show their statements were not empty and take concrete steps to implement actions towards healthy and sustainable recovery from the COVID-19 emergency. Next. In January 2022, starting this year, through the World Federation of Public Health Associations, which is in official relations with WHO, SHEM sent a letter to the executive board asking again for the equitable distribution of vaccines against COVID-19 and calling for a pandemic treaty as a sensible first step to transform the global system of governance in order to stop the pandemic and prevent future ones. And also SHEM urged the executive board to recognize that COVID-19 is better characterized as a syndemic due to the complexity of all aspects involved and not merely a pandemic. Next. So then in January, we had the publication of SHEM concept note at the World Health Organization bulletin. And this was a very important moment because on behalf of the movement, we had our steering committee members, Aracho Castro, Michael Marmot, Juan Garay, Armando De Negri, and Paulo Bus, publicating an article in which they stated the SHEM principles and its concept note, and which drives all our actions until now. Next. So in February 2022, SHEM also submitted a statement to the UN Human Rights Council, and the suggestions were to reinforce collaboration between the UN and the World Health Organization to begin negotiations on a global treaty on the right to health, recommend that that UN would hold a high-level meeting on the complex determination and an integral and collaborative response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and enhancing capacity building to advance human rights. So we had this statement presented by the delegation of Argentina at that opportunity, and it was also endorsed by several other countries during the meeting of the UN Human Rights Council. Next. SHEM also submitted a statement to the UN Environment Assembly. We had some members from one of the thematic working groups develop this statement, in which it examines it asks UN to examine and adopt a resolution on causes of environmental justice, social exclusion, and health inequities that were revealed during the pandemic. Also, SHEM requested a dynamic analysis and guidance on the threshold of carbon emissions per capita globally, and the dissemination of this ethical threshold to help change production and consumption patterns and contribute to progressive and catastrophic global warming. Next. Also, during the recent conflicts between Russia and Ukraine and the war in Ukraine, SHEM has made a declaration appealing for ceasefire in Ukraine and also claiming for peace everywhere in the world, because we know this was not the only armed conflict that the world's facing. So standing in solidarity with those suffering from the aggressions and violent actions in Ukraine, SHEM also hoped to hear news of peace in other areas that were in armed conflict, such as Syria, Afghanistan, Myanmar, Yemen, Ethiopia, Palestine, Somalia, and several other countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Next. Also in March 2022, SHEM held a webinar, the first webinar of its Human Rights Working Group, which was called Strengthening the Right to Health and Equity in International Law. What can we do? And at that moment, the Human Rights Working Group had prepared a statement that proposed a set of actions to advance the right to health and health equity within international law. And this webinar was a very interesting and important moment when we had people from around the world that discussed the theme and were able to send their inputs so that we could finish this statement and publish it to the SHEM network. Next. Also, SHEM has published in June a statement and a call to action on human rights and equity. So this statement, which was published then after the webinar with inputs from invitees, the statement was a call to action aimed at the UN Human Rights Council, the World Health Organization, states and civil society organizations and foundations. So it called for new human rights instruments such as Framework Convention on Global Health and the better implementation of the existing instruments to advance the rights to health and development. We will have a brief presentation from representatives of the working group that can surely provide much more detail and information about this. Next. Well, finally, this has been ongoing since throughout the year, and it is a pleasure for SHEM to partner with Fiocruz in its advanced seminars. Fiocruz holds advanced seminars on global health and health equity issues every 2 weeks with very important debates and really relevant actors from the global health scenario. And SHEM co-hosts the seminars, and often SHEM also sends representatives to engage in these debates and share their contributions. Next. Also, we have been published the SHEM highlights, and I hope you have all received at least one issue of it, and I hope you all help disseminate this. But this is an initiative that aims to gather news and articles and to publish events that are proposed by several institutions and partners that are actually surrounding the issue of sustainable health equity. And SHEM currently publishes also its main endeavors and initiatives from its partners. So this is a nice summary of what is going on and what we can look forward to. So, and this is always published on our website, on our social media, and it is always open to receive contributions. So if you want to, you can also make contact with SHEM through our email, through our website or social media, and share inputs and resources that we can publish in SHEM Highlight. Next. So this is mainly what SHEM has developed and achieved during the last year. It's been a long year, but I believe we have achieved quite a lot. And this is thanks to our network of partners, to our steering committee. And I would also like to take a minute to thank also André Salles, Gustavo Bus, and Ana Carol D'Amelio, which are also helping us and are part of the SHEM structure, and which are essential to that we have all these activities carried out, and that we continue to have a very important role achieving sustainable health equity. So thank you very much. Thank you to the steering committee for your efforts to help achieve this. And I hope we can continue in this endeavor in the near future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Laura, for this presentation. I think we have a good overview of the activities of SHEM. We have been working very hard. But of course, the challenges are facing us are very hard also. And we hope in the next year we will be able to be heard all our statements, not only by the head of government and head of multilateral organization, but our greatest challenge, I would say, is to reach all the members of all our networks. I made a quick calculation. We have at least 5 million people that are represented here in this network of all members of our organizations. So if you were able to make the next statement that we are going to discuss to reach each one of our members, of our associations, of our networks, I'm sure that we will be able to create a big wave of health equity, a value, as a ethical principle that will conduct the people's life in everywhere, and that will be impossible to be heard. That's our challenge now on. For these continued activities of our assembly, I would like now to invite the two thematic groups that has developed several activities during the last year. So it's my pleasure to invite Andrés Coutinho to present the activities of the thematic working group on global governance. Please, Andrés.
Thank you, Luis. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. I just want to make sure that you can hear me and you can see the screen. Great, thank you. Well, first of all, many thanks to all of you and to the group that organized this assembly, and thanks for including this item on the agenda, of course. And my name is Andrés Coutinho, and I am pleased to share with you some message on behalf of the thematic working group on global governance and equity. With approximately 15 members, active members of the SHEM community, we have put in motion this year this thematic group. We are a collective of public health experts, researchers, policy influencers who wants to support the movement and its members in the advocacy efforts for more robust and democratic global health governance mechanisms. In doing so, we understand that we have a common ground, of course, with that drift from the SHEM concept note. In fact, basically, there are three main ideas, three main concepts. The first is that we understand that sustainable health equity should be the moral and ethical value driving all national, regional, and global efforts to strengthen governance capacities. We understand that democratic and effective governance for health transcends public and private spheres, and also it also transcends the health and non-health sector interest, and is a must for good governance in any society. And finally, we understand that good governance for health could only be achieved if we integrate the health and the equity perspective into the policy making and into the decision making processes at every level, and especially and that is something that is going to come on the discussion today in the global fora. As many of you, as many of the members of the movement, we have identified some emerging challenges that we want to share. The first one relates to one of the statement. In fact, the statement we are considering today. We envision and we think there is an opportunity in the discussion of the new international pandemic treaty, and we understand that there is an opportunity to support the global South voices and elevate the debate to a broader and higher level. We think that we have an opportunity to move it towards a paradigm shift in global health governance and the way governance for global health is configured. Some colleagues here at the working group, they have extensive experience, and they will be pleased to share with the steering committee and with all the members some of the ideas in order to contribute to this idea of strengthening a position and a statement on this regard of looking for a global health treaty or any other instrument that could strengthen governance in global health and in governance in global governance for health. The second challenge, oh yes, I almost forget one of our all and well-known non-friends. A second challenge we identify, but that we think should be included in the way we understand governance and equity. Health system strengthening and governance capacity should be the core of these efforts, and we think, as one of our colleagues in the thematic working group said, we need a new holistic paradigm to define and implement health system governance strategies for sustainable health equity at a national or local level. This is a global governance working group, but in fact, we have started considering the ramifications of governance also at the national level and at local levels. So that is why our concern transcends to how we could engage those three levels. Of course, these are just some inputs that came from a small group of colleagues, but we think that to move forward and to reach a common ground of ideas and especially to reach a common ground of actions, we need a broad engagement of the SHEM members and the SHEM supporters. And that is why we are currently working on a brief statement to discuss the principles and the core concepts that should drive SHEM when addressing global governance and equity and health system governance, leadership, and equity. And this is why we have proposed a survey to share with the movement members and supporters. We want to capture all your concerns and all your ideas on global governance and equity, and we want to integrate them into this description of our common view. I know that you can see the link on the screen. Probably it's not easy to click on a PowerPoint, but we're going to share it in the chat in the YouTube web streaming, and we're going to share it here in the Zoom platform for all the people that is connected today in the assembly. So one final message that we want to share. We want to invite you all to join, or who thinks whoever thinks that could support this effort to join the thematic working group on global governance and equity. You can contact us, and we will forward you the information to join our monthly meeting. We are trying to keep two ways of working, with a synchronous way, having a monthly meeting where we all connect and go over the task and the plan we have for the year. And we're also trying to do some collaborative work, working all together and getting some inputs and supporting the steering committee and supporting the members in strengthening this advocacy on global governance. That is what we are doing. I think that is a starting point. That is how we consider it. So we really want to put these tools at your service and at the service of all the members and supporters, and try to continue working together. Thank you all for your time. Thank you, Luis. Thank you, Lara, and we look forward to hear from SHEM members.
Thank you very much, Andres. Very good work for the working group, the thematic group on global governance. And just to reiterate the demand to every member of the SHEM to answer to the survey prepared by the working group. Now, it's my pleasure to invite Eric Friedman to share his point of view on nowadays challenge on human rights and equity. He's the coordinator of the thematic working groups on human rights and health. Please, Eric.
Thank you very much, and thank you for, as Andre said, thank you for allowing us to give a very brief presentation, let you know about the work that our work group is doing, which is focused on, as you know, human rights and health equity. You heard briefly in Lara's overview of all the work of SHEM that we had a statement that we developed, and that's going to be my focus for these few minutes, going through the main items in the statement, which is basically our policy statement of what we're recommending, the actions that WHO and member states and others could take now to strengthen the right to health in international law. Next slide, please. So the mission of our work group is about really focused on law and how can we further capture, even though the right to health is already part of international law, how can we further strengthen international law in ways to meaningfully advance health equity and accountability, with actions focused especially on the right to health, but also looking a bit elsewhere as well. Next slide, please. So the first item on the statement, one that's a central element in several places, is the Framework Convention on Global Health. So I want to spend just a moment on that. It also fits very well with the SHEM collective statement and call for a global treaty on health equity and the right to health that I believe will be discussed a bit later today. So the Framework Convention on Global Health would be a treaty with mission of accountability to the right to health to ensure it's actually implemented, aimed at national and domestic health equity. It would have three core aspects. One, is that it would implement key human rights principles on accountability, participation, and equality. It would resource the right to health, and it would address the right to health across all actors and sectors, so addressing this social determinants of health and act from local to global levels. It would do this through specific standards and mechanisms. That's how it would advance where we are now and it could possibly happen through the UN or WHO. Next slide, please. The statement or the working group statement has two actions around this. One, we're calling for the World Health Organization's member states to commit to developing the Framework Convention on Global Health following the pandemic treaty, and also that WHO or the Human Rights Council or both could establish a working group to explore the possibilities of how to move forward on this right to health treaty and pave the way for negotiations. Next slide, please. We also have a number of other legal, policy, and institutional mechanisms as part of the statement. We're calling for a global health and human rights accountability framework, which again, either WHO or the UN via its Human Rights Council could establish. We're urging states to develop several different tools at the national level that could advance the right to health and health equity. One would be health equity programs of action, which would be comprehensive, inclusively developed, time-bound actions for health equity. Another would be health impact assessments, also called health equity impact assessments, or not quite the same, but very similar, right, health assessments. And all this could happen through World Health Assembly resolution that puts forward these tools and urges member states to implement them, and could also include follow-up and monitoring to see whether states are indeed doing that. And also we call for a new right to health capacity fund to support right to health advocacy and health-related participation and accountability. And a number of actors could develop that. Next slide, please. We also propose further standard setting. One would be a new general comment through the UN Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which recognizing that not only the right to health, but basically all rights, including all economic, social, cultural rights, involve and entail have implications for health equity. New general comment on health equity that encompasses all of these rights. A new World Health Assembly resolution on the right to health information in particular. We've seen how accurate information is not always seen in this world during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so the aim would be to combat health misinformation, improve health literacy, and improve the accessibility of accurate health information. Like, as we just heard very much from Andre in the governance working group, the pandemic treaty is an opportunity in this case for equity and the right to health. And we also urge the right to development treaty to include health equity explicitly. Next slide, please. And just a few further items we call for is much greater use of mandatory funding of assessments from the UN and WHO, not only, for example, for states-owned budgets, but also to, for example, mitigate health equity emergencies, such as humanitarian crises and so forth. We also call for funding to educate judges and lawmakers on the right to health justiciability and implementing the right to health through equity lens, as well as to fund the right to health capacity fund that I just mentioned. Next slide, please. And that does sum up our statement. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me. You can find the statement online at those two addresses, the HTML version, as well as PDF versions in both English and Spanish. As Andre said so well, those are a little hard to click on the YouTube or Zoom. So if it's possible to put those in the chats for the different platforms, that would be great. And we would also welcome your involvement. We would welcome any organization that's interested, or individual as well, that's interested in helping us actually help turn these actions into reality, in which case you can please email myself or one of my coordinators LHAM, the addresses are there as well. And just to mention, I talked a bit about, and I'm also representing the Framework Convention on Global Health Alliance. You can learn more about the Framework Convention on Global Health, the Treaty on the Right to Health, at that URL. So sorry for so many URLs. Thank you for your time. And let's move forward on human rights and health equity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Very, very good job, very great work. And I'm happy that we have the opportunity to try to build a network of networks. So we can have mutual support from each one of our organizations. Of course, we all will be stronger. So let's move for the next item of the agenda. Now I'd like to open the floor to SHEM members that were interested and volunteered to pre-register some statements. So I will ask the help of Guto and Red to show the statement that we received, the statement to the assembly, to this General Assembly.
Just one second. Okay, I'm going to share right now. Okay, you can see, yeah.
Yes, very well.
Lara, I think it's up to you.
No, Guto, sorry. Now we.
I think we are the following. It's Paulo Bus, yeah.
The pre-recorded statements from the SHEM members, item 6 of the agenda. It's not still the SHEM statement. We have some videos recorded from members of SHEM.
Yeah, but from, yeah, sorry, Luis, but now we have the floor, we have to give the floor to Paulo Bus, then we have the all presentations of the institutions. If we are like following the agenda right here, sorry.
Item 6, open floor to SHEM members.
Yes.
After it, item 7, representation of partner institutions.
Right here, let me show with you, just one second, please.
We are in 2 different agendas.
Yeah, no, let me show you right here. Then it's up to Paulo Bus right now.
Yeah. I guess we're talking about the 1-minute statement and
Yes.
you have participants registered, right?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, but I don't think
it's item 5 of the agenda.
Yeah, but I don't see this this person inside here at Zoom.
Okay. It was actually a colleague from the Framework Convention on Global Health. I don't know. Let me see. It was Learn More. Yeah, I don't think.
I think he didn't get it. Yeah.
So Luis, he was supposed to do his intervention live, but he's not here at this moment. So I would advise, if possible, that we move to the next item of the agenda for the presentation of SHEM partner institutions, and we'll keep an eye to see if our colleague that pre-registered to make a statement joins us, and then we'll let you know, Luis.
Okay, Lara, thank you for clarifying. So the people who asked for to address in the assembly is not present now. So we skip to the next item of the agenda, presentation of SHEM partner institution. So each representative of SHEM partner founding institution makes a brief presentation about the work developed by his or her organization over the last year in the direction of the Sustainable Health Act. So I'd like to invite Paulo Bus, the president of the Latin American Alliance for Global Health. Please, Paulo.
Thank you so much, dear friend and president of the World Federation, Luis Eugenio. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the participants in this General Assembly of the Sustainable Health Equity Movement. Are you hearing me well?
Yes, Paulo.
Okay.
Go on.
So, very impressive with the report of Lara on behalf of the steering committee. Very impressive activities, very impressive, a lot of initiatives implemented by SHEM during this year. And today is a day to commemorate SHEM as we complete the 2 years of the launch of the movement 2 years ago in July 2020. At that moment, we are living the haze of the COVID-19 pandemic, each day breaking world records of cases and deaths, as you remind. We also experienced the horror of not having medicines, vaccines, or diagnosed kits for the diseases, nor the materials to meet the urgent need to medical services, such as ventilators, masks, or simple gloves. However, what horrified us all even more was the immense inequality of access to the few resources that were available, given the immense needs. To advocate for more equitable access to the few resources available, we launched this movement for sustainable equity in health. The adhesion of numerous social activists and global entities representing health professionals, scientists, doctors, nurses, etc., and social activists from all over the world made the movement strong, and we were then heard by the United Nations General Secretariat and the WHO Director General as an example, as well as national leaders and other authorities responsible for equitably providing services suited to health needs. But SHEM's actions were not restricted to the high spheres of global governance, which is very important, but insufficient in view of the immensity of the problem of inequality. Community-based solutions were also discussed, proposed, and implemented by social activists and SHEM component entities around the world. Since then, the fight for equity has gone beyond resources to respond to the pandemic. And we have made progress towards sustainable equity in relation to all resources needed for health, not just for the care of the sick. We started to fight for socio-economic and environmental equity, the only way to face the root causes of illness, I mean the social determinants of health. The Latin American Alliance of Global Health, ALASAG, which I represent here as its president, is involved in this struggle for equity in all sectors of the social life. The only way to achieve better health for everyone, everywhere. Our institutional location is in the most unequal region in the world, Latin America. The institutes and universities that make up ALASAG work train human resources, research, and act socially to make Latin American society a more just and inclusive society. In all possible forums, we are working together with SHEM, raising our voice, asking responsible governments to implement public policies that reverse the situation of extreme inequality in all dimensions of social life, not only in health. Moreover, an extensive work of research and training of human resources has been carried out within the scope of SHEM, bringing together, as Lara said, bringing together ALASAG and the Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, a member entity of the Alliance. These are weekly discussions on global health and possible solutions provided by health diplomacy, a space for inter-country negotiations to face global health problems, whose main origin is political, social, economic, environmental, and also sanitary. The advanced seminars on global health and health diplomacy, jointly promoted by Fiocruz, Al-Azhar, and SHEM, are a good example of the effort towards sustainable equity in health. Next November, Al-Azhar will hold its biannual Congress in Santiago, Chile, which has a fundamental basis for discussions, the confrontation and overcoming of inequalities in health, and the promotion of equity. All of you are invited to participate in our biannual Congress next November. Despite the advances in the organization of SHEM and the firm defense and advocacy of equity in health, progress in achieving social and health equity has been slow, showing us that the interests of the most powerful countries and groups of countries like G7 and G20 and the interests of the capital override the interests of societies and the poorest. So much remains to be done. Therefore, we reiterate the full support of Al-Azhar and its member entities to the work plan for 2022-2023, prepared by the steering committee of SHEM, of which Al-Azhar is a part. Al-Azhar and its members are very happy and proud of the networking we have been implementing. Viva SHEM, as we used to say in Spanish and Portuguese. And thank you so much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Paulo, our important leader of global health. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Aracho Castro, representing the Health Equity Network of the Americas. Please, Aracho.
Thank you, and good morning. Lara, do you have the slides, or should I use my copy?
Gustavo will be sharing the slides.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. So I'm very happy to represent the Health Equity Network of the Americas in SHEM. And this network was initiated a few years ago and was reconfigured 2 years ago, and it has its headquarters at the University of Costa Rica. And the director is Dr. Rocio Sáenz. And we started our first year developing our strategic objectives. We actually published them. And we have been working very hard this year, going more into depth into all the activities that we have planned. If you can go to the next one, please. So we have several priority themes, and the way we work together is that we are a multidisciplinary regional platform. We combine different areas of expertise and knowledge, and those interact with the research, teaching, and social action activities that we have developed. And we used different strategic visions, and our goal is to work at the local, national, regional, and global levels. We have 6 priority themes, and one is the impact of the pandemic on vulnerable populations. Another one is the public health interventions on social determinants of health. And being in Latin America, we also work on the social determination of health. And number 3 is the human rights among the homeless. And this project, for example, the way it operates is that based on the prior experience of Dr. Ritterbusch, who's a member of the Directive Council. They have started in Curridabat, which is outside of the capital city of Costa Rica, San Jose. And they have partnered with different community-based organizations and also with municipalities. And the idea is to develop a participatory action-based research following a methodology developed in Colombia. And based on the experience from this project in Costa Rica, the idea is to bring it to other countries in the region. And that's how a lot of our projects are working. We start in one place, but the idea is to bring it at a regional level. Number 4 is a rights-based comprehensive care for pregnant women. And I'm pleased to lead this effort along with my colleagues. We use a similar methodology, which is that there have been some very positive interventions developed in Costa Rica to bring dignified care to pregnant people. And we are conducting fieldwork research to identify and be able to document what happened and how hospital in particular that has this human rights-based approach has been able to completely transform the care that they provide to its population. And the idea is to learn on these positive aspects and then to establish alliances with organizations in other countries in the region to work towards this transformation of care, because unfortunately, obstetric care is way too prevalent in the region. So we're trying to identify these positive ways to bring about transformation. And obstetric violence not only is an affront to human rights, but also is associated with negative health outcomes for mother and child. Number 5 is about borders and migration. And Latin America is a region, well, the Americas is a region with very important flux of populations and that are developing new routes as immigration processes are transformed throughout the region. So it's a very important topic to work on from a health equity perspective. And finally, we work in developing new ways of training in health equity. And the next one, please. This is our directive council, and with the countries where we are represented. But again, we work with colleagues throughout the region. And we have a website that is in Spanish at the moment, but it will be also in English. And it's under construction, but you can already look at it and obtain some information, and also how to contact us if you have any questions. And again, we are very proud members of the Sustainable Health Equity Movement. And I second Paulo in saying Viva SHEM. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for your congratulations for the work of the Health Equity Networks of the Americas. Now, I'd like to invite Belly Rogado, that's representing Dr. Adriano Triganovic, the World Federation of Critical Care Nurses, also a founding member of SHEM. Please, Dr. Belly Rogado.
Good evening to all of you from Manila, Philippines. So I am representing Adriano Triganovic, who is the president of the World Federation of Critical Care. Can I have the slide presentation, please?
Just 1 second, please.
No problem. So next slide, please. So just a brief backgrounder of the World Federation of Critical Care. We are an international federation comprised of the National Critical Care Nursing Association from over 50 countries and regions. And our organization was founded in October 30, 2001 in Sydney, Australia. Our key aim is to represent critical care nurses at an international level and to help improve critical care nursing practice worldwide. The main goal is to link the critical care nursing associations and nurses throughout the world to strengthen the influence and contribution of critical care nurses to healthcare globally and be a collective voice advocate for the nurses and the patient at an international level. Next slide, please. So the World Federation is governed by a structure composed of the Council of Representatives from various countries, the ambassadors from various regions, editors of our international journal, and this is spearheaded by the board of directors. Next slide, please. So the Critical Care Federation communicates, collaborates, and cooperate with all critical care nurses and even non-critical care nurses globally, because it is our intent to build competence, confidence, capacity, and capability in critical care nursing workforce globally. Because we also believe that through informed critical care nursing practice, they will be able to provide safe, accessible, and equitable practice for the patient and the people that they serve. Next slide, please. So in order to be able to do this, we provide critical care nurses the following opportunities for continued education. In our website, we have there an ebook which comprise of a lot of resources that they can use to improve their practice. Next slide, please. Now, recently this year, we partnered with Continuous, which is a web platform providing online access to medical courses and lectures with leading educators and researchers. We also partnered with them to create a critical care nursing course online and a digital library where they can access a lot of evidence-based information. And this is the free access for the members and even non-members because we do offer free subscription to other nurses. Next slide, please. So Continuous is being run by a company, but their speakers are leading critical care subject experts, and most of the programs are on demand, which they can access through the website. Next slide, please. Just recently in June, we have launched the International Journal of Critical Care, which is running towards its second edition sometime this September. So this is where you find a lot of researches and studies compiled by critical care nurses all over the world. Next slide, please. So what we're doing right now is to send messages of support through our quick resource guide for non-critical care staff in multiple languages. We also use social media networks for sharing information. And in our website, we have a COVID-19 platform that will help the frontliners and even those working in the ICU during this pandemic. We provide lectures and discussion forums with partners and member society of the World Federation. Next slide, please. So our current project are focused on education of critical care nurses all over the world, the ebook revision to make it updated, and of course, we have our open access webinar for critical care nurses in collaboration with the Critical Care Nurses Association of the Philippines. Next slide, please. So thank you very much, and we're very proud to be a member of SHEM. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Belly Rogado. The World Federation of Critical Care Nurses represents a very important asset for SHEM, no doubt. I'd like now to invite the Inter-Academy Partnership, Dr. Richard Catlow, the co-president of the IAPE. Please, Dr. Richard.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm very pleased to be able to join this meeting, this General Assembly of this hugely important initiative. I'm co-president, as you can see, of the Inter-Academy Partnership. And the Inter-Academy Partnership is a partner and great supporter of SHEM. What I'd like to do first, perhaps we can move to the next slide, please, is just tell you a little bit more about the IAP. It's essentially a network with a membership of 150 academies, science, medicine and engineering. It has 4 regional networks, one for the Americas, one for Europe, one for Africa, and one for Asia. That's one of its major strengths. But it has access, as you can see, to more than 30,000 leading scientists, and that's its core strength: scientists, engineers, and health professionals in over 100 countries. And IAP academies, they work together, and our focus is to support the role of science in developing evidence-based solutions to the world's really major problems. What I'd like to do on the next slide, please, if we can move to the next slide, is just to give you a very brief feeling for some of the recent and current work of the IAP. We have major projects, and several of these have a kind of regional to global feature, that each of our regional networks tackles a key problem and produces a report, and then we synthesize the reports from the 4 regional networks into a global synthesis. And here are just 2, I think, of the really major ones recently. A few years ago, a very influential report on food and nutrition security and agriculture. And then more recently, a report on climate change and health. The link, and obviously that is highly relevant, I think, to the work of SHEM, the link between climate change and health. So I think those are really important and influential reports. Now, if we could move to the next slide, please. In addition to our major reports, we regularly produce statements. These are shorter statements, but still very carefully researched by working groups, and communiques. The communiques respond to rapidly to developing global events. You can see on the slide just 3 recent ones, all relating to the COVID pandemic: a call for global solidarity, global green recovery after COVID, and a communique on the development and distribution of vaccines. Now, again, I think all relevant to the work of SHEM. We've also, it's not on this slide, produced, I think, what is developing into an influential report on data sharing, health data sharing in global health emergencies. As I say, I think that is beginning to be really quite influential. So if we could move to the next slide. Just a few words about the relationship between IAP and SHEM. IAP is a founding member of SHEM. We co-signed the original letter to the UN Secretary General. We're represented on the steering committee by Jorg and Suraj. We support the hosting by hosting the SHEM website. And we've endorsed this, I think, very important collective statement on health equity. So this body of over 140 academies is firmly behind SHEM, its activities and its objectives. If we could move to the next slide, please. Just to let you know that we will be having our IAP, our triennial conference, and our own General Assembly. This will be a hybrid meeting, in person in the biosphere in Arizona, but large numbers of people will be joining online, and registration for online will open shortly. It's hosted by the US National Academy of Sciences and the Royal Society of Canada, and co-organized by IAP. And we're doing this work, I should say, jointly with the GYA. So we will get the voice of early career scientists. So if we could just move to the last slide, please. That's really all from me. I repeat, very glad that I was able to join you today. We are firmly behind the aims and objectives and activities of SHEM. And by looking at our website, you can learn more about the activities of IAP. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Richard. No doubt the IAP is a very important member of SHEM. We are trying to base our statement and our position in science, in scientific knowledge. So important to lead the world to face the crisis, the pandemic. And if all governments around the world had been led by science, probably we would have better results than we have now. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Lewis.
And now it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Bettina Borishi, CEO of the World Federation of Public Health Associations. Please, my friend Bettina.
Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to the friends and colleagues around the virtual table, especially to Lewis. Yes, we at the World Federation are founding members, and I would say there is even a physiological link, because not only can the umbrella organization of all public health professionals worldwide not be with sustainable health equity as a content that we all share. We cannot imagine public health without these values. But on the other hand, and perhaps not every one of you does know, we also have at the World Federation of Public Health Associations a very personal link. You see that for today, our organizer, Luis Eugenio de Souza, is also the president of the World Federation. And we're very happy to have him. But, and that it's even going further back, another of our former presidents was Paulo Gus. So you see, we are kind of family. And that's why I really appreciate to be able to talk to you here about some aspects of what we consider very important at our work at the World Federation of Public Health Associations. Everyone here has talked about networks, and in fact, I think all of us, we want to do the same thing, but everyone on its own way, its own territory, and its competencies. There are the researchers, the academics, as we heard from Richard, and there are the legal people, as we heard from Eric. And so we try to put our competencies together. And for us, like for other of our organizations, we need to do a lot of things in the same time. Can you see my screen for the moment being already? Good. So, also at the World Federation, we want to do everything, but we cannot. That's why we need networks. I will, for the time being, talk about our work as advocates and our work on leadership. So I will concentrate here. Among the things we are doing in advocacy and leadership for health equity, there are very concrete and very critical things that we do with our several statements, our working groups, our publications. And like everyone around the table, the COVID pandemic has even exacerbated the problems of inequity that are the predominant situation around the world. So we have been clearly advocating and working to stop blocking this scale. We have to go against those who block scaling up of vaccines. We have joined WHO's campaigns for vaccine equity. We have been calling for to waive the TRIPS thing. We have been on several occasions at the executive board, EB board of the World Health Organization, but also at the General Assembly. And all these statements and all this are always topics around health equity and access and equal access. You have seen here just some, and I underlined the ones where I think that health equity is really very visible. And COVID, as kind of an accelerator to the incredible situation in this world, has made it even more important for us to go where we can work, where we can do it, and go also what we feel very important outside our health sector and go to places like the World Trade Organization or the World Intellectual Property Organization, where a lot of the decisions are taken that finally influence health equity more than the things we can do with WHO. And to go for that, our past president, Walter Ricciardi, created the Public Health Leadership Coalition at the World Federation. It reunifies, takes together leading public health experts who may and can influence local governments or local structures or national structures or places like G7 and G20. And you see here some very, very well-known to you faces, like, for example, Rocio is here. And this is also, in a certain way, the Public Health Leadership Coalition, a think tank. And from time to time, you will see one or the other publishing thoughts that have been created in our think tank, like Alejandro Jadat, who talked about facing leadership that kills, and how we think about leadership and absolutely bad leadership. But in our advocacy and leadership work, I think that all the statements we are all doing, the most important we can do here is constituting statements at the World Health Assembly and the executive board of the WHO. And as you see, this goes around the several topics that are all interlinked and go from climate change to health emergencies, to workforce issues, and so forth. So what I heard already from Eric and from others, for us now, a very important topic is the pandemic treaty and the work that is going on at the WHO. We all know, and I know Nicoletta is here, how difficult we as civil society feel to really go and work as civil society organization with WHO. But the UN organizations are our multilateralism organizations, so we have to be there. The work on the pandemic treaty is going fast, I think very fast, since the inception in November 21. The INB board has been going very fast. April, we had a second meeting, and the next meeting in the second half of this year will already decide on the legal framework. So we at the World Federation went together with the International Hospital Federation, the primary care doctors, and the International Federation of Social Workers to be a stronger voice there. We are there with every meeting the INB has. We are having statements at every meeting, and we really want to follow up and to see that this pandemic treaty includes the values we are staying for: sustainable health equity. And that's why I think one of the important things we hear around this virtual table is that we are not only, I think, networking is too small a word, that we are really trusting each other, that we can go together, because only as partners for our one and single goal, we can make it happen. So we also at the World Federation try to extend our networks continuously, far beyond health. We want to have those on board who can really help us go there. And advocating together, meaning going together, means for me, SHEM, Sustainable Health Equity Movement at large. Long-term goals, these are really long-term goals. And it's the very good, never give it up, needs great endeavor and passion. And I think we do have it, and we have to keep it up. For sure, we are working sometimes very much on sustainability and working with the particular dedicated organizations like UNEP or with ECOSOC or with the Codex Alimentarius or FAO. We always try to have these partnerships once established really going on, because we need all the little and the large and the very important voices together. We hope to also have you all join in at this joining of voices at our next Congress in Rome, that we hope to have hybrid, but with a lot of in-person participation, will be held in May 2nd to 6th. And we will address a lot of the questions that are dear to all of us, and especially to SHEM. So in addition to all that, I like to put it, what we are doing on a road. We are on the road. We do much more at the World Federation, in our working groups, in our research and publications work, at our dedicated journal, at the multiple webinars we are doing. But very interestingly, our Global Public Health Week that turned out to be a success this year. First time we did it ever. We will repeat it. We managed to get people from all different sectors into 1 week from all around the world. I thank all the hosts who participated. And that's why I think we have never to forget that during our work on a long-term goal, we also have to be aware of quick and fast interventions, like the interventions everyone mentioned, war in Ukraine, war in other places, risky parts. We have then to be able to quickly come together and raise our voice also quickly. But we are on the long road to sustainable health equity. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Bettina. Very good overview of the many activities of the World Federation. I'm very proud to be part and to be representing now. We have two more presentations that are recorded from Sir Michael Marmot from the World Medical Association, and after Dr. Felix Rosenberg for the IAPI. Please, let's hear to Michael.
Sustainable health equity is clearly an issue for the whole of government, the whole of society, international organizations, as well as local communities. The question is, where do medical and health professionals fit? I'm pleased to say that the World Medical Association has embraced sustainable health equity. It passed resolutions on social determinants of health. It is intimately concerned with sustainability. And I want to give you the example of what's happened in the United Kingdom. We produced a report in February 2020, the Marmot Review, 10 years on health equity in England, as to what we should be doing to reduce health inequalities. The Royal College of Physicians convened several other of the medical royal colleges And they wrote an open letter to the Prime Minister, urging him to act on the recommendations in my report. Having convened that group, they then formed themselves into an Inequalities in Health Alliance, where these are the senior representatives of the medical profession, who in addition have responsibility for overseeing specialist training. Medical groups said they wanted to join the Inequalities in Health Alliance. It now has 215 members in the United Kingdom, all the major medical charities, the medical law colleges, civil society groups of various forms, have all joined this Inequalities in Health Alliance. It's saying that the medical profession has a key responsibility, not just for equity in access to health care, but for addressing the social determinants of health. And the second initiative that's happened in the UK and in many other countries, but the way it's worked in the UK is that we now have integrated care systems that combine health and medical care and social care. They've been asking us how they can take action on social determinants of health. And we've been producing reports for cities and regions within the UK on what integrated care systems can do to address the wider determinants of health. We've had 6 domains of recommendations, to which we've added 2. The original, give every child the best start in life, education, lifelong learning, employment and working conditions, having enough money to live on. Number 5, healthy and sustainable places and communities in which to live and work. And number 6, taking a social determinants approach to prevention. We've added 2, tackle structural racism, discrimination, and their consequences, and put everything in the context of dealing with the climate crisis. The medical and health professions have a great deal to contribute to creating a more sustainable world with greater health equity.
Thank you, Guto. Sir Marmot has been a very active member of SHEM Steering Committee. Unfortunately, he could not be here today, but his method is always very good to hear. So now I'd like to ask Guto to present the record by Dr. Felix Rosenberg from the International Association of National Public Health Institutes.
One second, please.
Dear friends from SHEM, good day and have a very good meeting. Unfortunately, I'm not able to be present during your meeting, so I just send you my warmest greetings. And just 2 words about IAMFI, that's International Association of National Public Health Institutes, referred to inequities. As a matter of fact, inequities is one of the very important issues which are part of the plan of action of IAMFI. Let me tell you that last year's General Assembly, which was held in Fiocruz, digitally distance, we, for the first time, we prepared a yearly declaration of IAMFI, which was called the Rio de Janeiro Declaration. And this declaration was exactly referred to inequities in health and exactly on how National Institutes of Public Health should work, should refer to handling inequities. And one of the most important issues is exactly to advise or to recommend that national institutes organize national inequity health observatories. So this is going to be supported by a group which will work on health inequities, a group formed by volunteer institutes within the IAMFI members, CDC, United States CDC, and us, of course, are already involved with this group, organizing this group. We will probably have a Quebec Institute and a few others to start working on actual methods and issues and indicators and approaches to involve national institutes with inequities. This subject is going to be the major subject of our first presential meeting of the regional Latin American network of IAMFI, which will be held in the city of Mexico in the beginning of November, 4 to 7 November, and to which, of course, any of you who would like to attend is very warmly invited. This meeting will be held at the headquarters of the National Institute of Public Health of Mexico in the city of Cuernavaca, near to Mexico City. And let me also tell you that besides the IAMF involvement, strong involvement with inequities and with trying to advocate with the national institutes to incorporate the study of inequities in health, we are also working very actively in the network of the Portuguese-speaking countries. And we will have a meeting also, the first presential meeting after the pandemics in the city of Maputo, Mozambique. And this meeting, which will be held in the month of November, will deal with nutritional and food insecurity, which is, of course, one of the major issues, and probably I might say pandemic nowadays. And this meeting will be held together with people from the agriculture sector so that we can discuss particularly issues on agroecology and on nutritional guides, locally prepared nutritional guides with the strong intervention of the National Institutes of Public Health. So this, we are very proud to tell you that this issue is being considered a very high priority in all of our activities, and at least in the networks, both of the IAMFI institutes, particularly referred to Latin America, and in the network of the African, of the Portuguese-speaking countries. So a very, very strong, warm hug to you and much success, many years to come for SHEM. Bye-bye.
Very good to have IAMFI in the SHEM network as a SHEM member. The Public Health Institutes are a real asset for developing countries to have access to vaccines and to medicines and to develop public health tools. So we finished the part of the members of SHEM's founding members. Now we are a little bit late, but we now reached the most challenging part of our assembly. That's the idea to have a statement, a collective statement from all networks that are able to be really spread all over the world for the members of each one of our organizations and to reach all heads of governments and of multilateral organizations, the United Nations organizations, the WHO, and so on. To all of you have received this statement. Considering the time, I will not read it again, but I will thank you, Nicoletta Dentico and Mary Studer, to have accepted our invitation to debate, to discuss the main challenge related to the promotion of health equity and of sustainable development of planetary health. So each one of them will have 20 minutes to present their contributions to our assembly. So I'm very happy and very honored to invite Dr. Nicoletta Dentico, who is the co-chair of the Geneva Global Health Hub, to present her thoughts and her contribution to our discussions during this assembly. Please, Dr. Nicoletta.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Good. Thank you so much, Dr. Luis Eugenio de Souza. I'm very happy and very grateful for this invitation. I can see that the SHEM community has a lot of people with whom we have worked together in different positions for a long time. Bettina is certainly one on the civil society group, but the beauty of this group is that we also have a commonality of ideas and visions between civil society actors, policymakers, academic world, just joining forces, as Bettina was saying. Networking is so important, and now the big challenge is also to get out of our health echo chamber, to stretch out our networking to other spheres, to other arenas. So I'm particularly happy, and I welcome very much when I read this statement and the outline of the agenda, that planetary health, planetary rights are included in the horizon of SHEM, which is not at all to be taken for granted. If you listen to the discussions at the WHO, if you listen to the discussions of many, I would say far too many global health actors who, notwithstanding 3 years of COVID almost, and the many other threats and the many other challenges that the world will have to face, and COVID certainly was not the first one, but certainly the first one at the global scale, many entities of the civil society themselves have not really yet, in my view, grasped the dimension and the magnitude, the cultural magnitude of change that we have to really introduce when we talk about global health. And I would like to start by also, in a way, challenging to myself first the concept of global health. I think I can take the liberty here to actually advocate for global public health, because we also know very well, and of course there are very many, all of you are public health entities, that's why I dare do so here. Today, in the common discourse, when you talk about global health, it doesn't necessarily mean public at all. In fact, the trend is towards increasing privatization of health, the increasing transfer of health rights, health equity, health determinants to a market logic, to a purely market logic, and to private actors, so that, as Paolo Bus was saying earlier, capital interests override people's interests. It is so unfortunate that in this type of interregnum time that comes after COVID, when we are no longer in the situation where we were before COVID, but we have not yet entered maybe or well defined the future after COVID. So I call it a kind of an interregnum time. this interregnum, I'm sort of using a bit of philosophical terms of my Italian kind of background, but in this interregnum, what we can see is an unfortunate, what we can see is an unfortunate acceleration of trends that are shifting health into the commercial sector and into the market sector more and more. Digitalization risks being yet another way of transferring health rights into a domain of very obscure governance and very questionable horizons. So we are in a very complicated time as a world of turmoil, as Bettina's presentation put it, but also a very dire and very dire transition with a lot of responsibility that I think is even more today placed on people like you, like the SHEM community. I would dare include myself into this. I mean, all these people that maybe belong also to the kind of old school and who really do care for public health and who really do care for the right to health and who really do care for equity. Equity is sustainable by definition, otherwise it wouldn't be equity, would it? I mean, I'm saying this as a journalist because either it's sustainable or equity is not there. And also, the sustainability narrative in which we are all today, for all its good intentions and good promises, started in 2015, is actually today crashing very violently, I think, with a reality of unsustainability that is actually growing. It is a bit of a paradox of these dire times that as we continue talking about sustainability, hunger has increased, and hunger has increased even before COVID. And of course, the nutritional insecurity, food insecurity is moving ahead since 2014, and of course has been accelerated by COVID. Violence has increased in all forms. We have, according to the Uppsala University, 169 conflicts ongoing, raging the world today. And I think this is something that needs to be tackled, because not only cannot we speak about equity in isolation or health equity in isolation from other forms of equity. I think we cannot talk about health inequities, health inequalities, which is actually the core business of SHEM. Health inequalities are just a representation, just one of the reproductions of the existential inequalities that are actually marking the life of the majority of people in this world. And this is a rather kind of dystopic scenario in which we live. The financial inequalities, I think we are living today, for all the sustainable narrative that we hear and that we try to practice and that we try to implement in the UN fora, in all fora at the national level too. But I think we are honestly living in a kind of post-feudal technocratic system today, where wealth accumulation is increasing, and of course, due to COVID as well, wealth uncertainty, financial uncertainty, and financial precariousness or outright misery is also increasing. We should not forget that countries have faced the COVID and the socioeconomic impact of COVID, increasing their national debts enormously in the global north and in the global south. And of course, there are, these were necessary. These were totally necessary. It was necessary to invest public money to protect the living, simply of families, of workers, of small and middle-sized industries, of all the economic activities. But our next generations, the people coming after us, will not only have to deal with the unsurmountable and unsustainable climate emergency, they will also have to put up with an unsurmountable and unsustainable financial emergency. If we think of facing this crisis and also preparing for the pandemic future. You have talked a lot about the pandemic treaty. There is no way in which the world can respond to the pandemic challenges of the future, can prepare for pandemic response and prevention, if the financial knots, which are unsustainably hurting, injuring this world, are not addressed. And therefore, of course, health inequities are the area of our interest. Health inequities will grow. Health inequities will definitely grow. They will grow with the droughts that are, scaring and scarring the world. It will grow with the heat that is now even surpassing 50 degrees Celsius, for which our bodies are not used to. They are not just adjusted for. Health inequities will grow for the increasing violence that is actually impending on women, impending on indigenous populations. I've had the opportunity of working in the jury of the Permanent People Tribunal on instances of violations to the right to health in some of the countries in Latin America. And of course, this also regards, it's very much related to my country, Italy, whose health system was supposed to be one of the best in the world. And then we realized that while the WHO was supporting the model of Lombardy, of the private sector penetrating the public sector through public incentives and public funding as a model, as a good practice, we have seen what COVID has produced into Lombardy, which is one of the richest areas of Europe. That means one of the richest areas in the world, okay? Lombardy has been devastated, also because it is one of the most polluted areas in Europe, the most polluted area in Europe. And it has been devastated by COVID. And yet, the post-COVID legislation that Lombardy is adopting now is a repetition of the same privatized model that will prepare the way for future inequities, for future problems, for future crises. So I think SHEM and all the other entities that like SHEM and all the organizations founding SHEM and the people whom I personally know and whom I totally trust that are here in the founding group of SHEM, I think we will have to do, and we will have to do together an enormous job to make people understand what the stakes are today, even more than in the past. We are suffering the legacy of having neglected the reality of health and health rights in the world for decades. We are in a period of history where the policy vision is kind of giving pace and giving way to the kind of business logic, to the business culture, to the entrepreneurial logic. The policy domain has abdicated its responsibility, even its sense of identity in a way, to quick solutionisms or to technocratic solutions, looking always at the last mile. And this is very much the case also for the pandemic treaty. The problem is not only what Bettina hinted at earlier on for the pandemic treaty, access to civil society organizations. Because I don't think that, after all, it is governments that should negotiate a treaty. Treaties are too serious things to leave it in the hands of anybody else if not governments, who have an obligation, a statutory constitutional obligations to care for the health rights and for the health of their people, the more so during emergencies. But what I see in this pandemic treaty is the quintessential, representation, once again, of a health culture that does not at all respond to health rights, that does not really respond to a deep political vision of social determinants of health, environmental determinants of health, trade determinants of health. Nowhere has, in almost 2 years of discussions about the pandemic treaty in the WHO, the issue of banning wildlife trading, which is at the root causes, one of the causes of zoonotic events. 75% of zoonotic events are produced by wildlife trading. No one has ever mentioned how this very technical, very specific measure could act as a preventive action, as a preventive intervention to really prepare and prevent future pandemics. No one has ever talked about this. And we are looking at the containment part. We are looking, prevention is not really in the minds of the people that have promoted the pandemic treaty, that are most of those that are driving the negotiation of the pandemic treaty. It's containment, it's surveillance. It's actually looking at biomedical solutions, as if access to countermeasure were the way in which we really are serious about responding and preparing to pandemics. Honestly, I think I'm not a doctor, so I know I am very bold in what I'm stating, but if we don't take the opportunity of COVID-19 to learn the very harsh lessons and see that health starts with prevention and starts with looking at all the conditions for dignity of people and animals today, because we will not be able to look at prevention of pandemics if we only involve nurses in a critical setting. We will have to also involve veterinaries. We will have to involve people that are working with animals. We will have to involve geologists. We will have to involve a lot of many more professional entities that can help address the issue of future pandemics. And as you were saying at the very beginning, there is an ethical crisis here that we have to face. We see the health crisis, the environmental crisis, the human rights crisis. Everybody talks about human rights, but in effect, human rights are under a new stage of hyper-financialization, and also human rights will be more and more subjected to digitalization. So the combination of human rights, digitalization, and financialization is something that needs to be monitored very closely for the present, not just for the future. This is what we see, when I just would like to give you a very, into parentheses, when you read and when you research on digital health, as I've had the privilege of doing recently for a report, when you hear that in the United States, 20,000 chatbots were created in 1 year. Chatbots are this kind of digital machineries to enter your life, and 20,000 of them were created in 2021 in the US to basically assist mental health, to provide mental health services. When we know that, when we know that mental health is private everywhere in this world, and only 2.02% of this chatbot have had any clinical, any assessment by health professionals, we are entering into a rather dystopic era where health issues will be addressed by artificial intelligence. And that is something that I think health professionals and health and people caring for health have to really consider very, very carefully. But let's go back to SHEM and let's go back to the content also of your statement. Of course, global public health requires more binding instruments. That is out of discussion. I totally agree with the intention of SHEM in that regard, because there are not very many. In fact, very few binding agreements envelope the global public health arena. I would like to voice with you some concerns about, however, this multiplication of treaty negotiations. They are all relevant. They should dialogue with each other, I think, more, because negotiating a treaty, a binding treaty, is a very complex exercise. And it starts with civil society. I'm sorry, it starts with the reality in the countries. It starts with the people. It starts with bringing the evidence. One of the main weaknesses of the pandemic treaty, in my view, is that none of this is present. There is no real assessment of why the other binding agreement has not worked, such as the international health regulations. There is no real evidence of what has failed and what we really need to address. So I think it's important to create new pathways for binding arrangements in health, because we need to make governments really be responsible for what they are already constitutionally responsible for, their society, their peoples, and their environmental health too. Because today, I think we need to talk about One Health. We need to talk about eco health. We cannot only talk about human health. We can see that we don't live in isolations, and thanks God we don't. We are also, a small species on this world. So my word of caution is let's be very mindful of the fact that while meaning very good propositions and good purposes, we are creating a scenario of complex negotiations at the same time that not all delegations can sustain, first, that not all can follow. I can see already, but even in Europe, people in Europe, I have attended a European meeting to simply accomplish some of the tasks that the IMB had given them, and the Europeans, who are presumably kind of, more organized, they couldn't know where to start. They had no clue. So it's really complex. It's and let's not and let's avoid overdoing things. Meaning, well, maybe we can, and I hope, I'm sure that many of the principles of SHEM, and you are already working to this end, as Lara's presentation showed. Let's kind of seed many of the ideas and all the goals and the mandate of SHEM into the current pandemic treaty arena, because we really need to do a lot of work to improve that process from the political content-wise, from the governance point of view, and from the horizons and the visions that this pandemic treaty should project for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicoletta. Very insightful thoughts and comments. I'm a little bit worried about time, where some people are leaving, but we appreciate very much your participation and your contribution and your insightful comments. I'd like now to invite Dr. Marie Studer, representing the Planetary Health Alliance, for her contribution, for sharing her thoughts. Please, Dr. Marie.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having us here. I will say that I have my colleague, Jeremy Pivor, with me as well on the line, and I'd love him to jump in at any point. And Nicoletta, that was an amazing introduction and conversation, and it's a very tough act to follow, for sure. I will also be brief given the time, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for having the Planetary Health Alliance join this meeting. We are new to the world of SHEM, if you will. Only a few months have we been working together. But we wanted very much to sign on and support the declaration that SHEM put out because it aligns very much with the thinking and trajectory, if you will, of planetary health. So for those who don't know, planetary health is a solutions-oriented and transdisciplinary scientific field, and it's also a social movement. So it's this idea that it's focused on analyzing and addressing the impacts of human disruptions on Earth's natural systems and how that impacts all dimensions of human health, whether it's non-communicable diseases, communicable diseases, mental health, and food, nutrition, and so on. And it looks very much at how what we call this Earth crisis. So disruptions of natural systems spans everything from climate change, global pollution, land use change. It looks at the whole piece. It doesn't look at our existence on the planet in a siloed way or in isolation. It looks at how we're disrupting this in the Earth's natural systems, which we call the Earth crisis, and how that crumbling natural systems infrastructure is actually accelerating the humanitarian, human health, and social justice crisis. So, and obviously health equity is part of that. And it really states that because of this deterioration of our natural systems and the stability that provides to basically to civil society and civilization, we are no longer able to safeguard a livable future for humans and all life on Earth. So that's the planetary health lens. It's a very broad lens, and it also calls for something that we term the Great Transition. Other people talk about it as the Great Turning or other ways, and it has been referred to here. It's basically, we need to come up with a whole new paradigm of living on Earth in order to move forward in a safe, just, and equitable way. And so we very much look into, at future generations, as we've been talking about too. Not only are we thinking about today, but we really are thinking about how do we create that livable future for going forward. Getting to the declaration and why the Planetary Health Alliance, I should just mention the Planetary Health Alliance is an organization of over 300 members around from 60 countries and so on. We work internationally and we work across disciplines and across sectors. And we're sort of a global convener for the planetary health community, which is growing rapidly. And to that end, we've been lucky enough, and we have regional members or regional hubs around the world, 10 regional hubs around the world, so that we can make sure that we hear from people around the world what problems and challenges they're facing on the ground and what their local solutions are. And we want to be able to share that information with our community worldwide. One reason we wanted to really sign on to the SHEM declaration was it really dovetails beautifully with something that we have, which is called the Sao Paulo Declaration on Planetary Health. And I'll put these links and share them with Laura so she can get them out to you. But the Sao Paulo Declaration on Planetary Health looks at across 19 different sectors of society and makes recommendations for how we need to change across those 19 sectors of society in order to create a livable future. And in that is embedded the idea, of course, of health equity, human rights, social justice, and also it looks at, I'm sorry, I was just thinking, it addresses, as I said, across 19 sectors, which include the health sector, governments, as well as lawyers, artists, and a number of other groups. So we're really looking at how do we bring the conversation broadly out to, as Andre and others have mentioned, civil society, and how do we engage everyone in one single conversation about stabilizing Earth's natural systems in order to protect human health and all life on Earth. I think I'll stop there. I know I've forgotten some probably really important aspects. I will say that we're grateful for partnering with World Federation for Public Health Associations now and SHEM, and we would like to work with many of you on this call going forward.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marie Studer. Since the beginning, our challenge is we have a lot of difference among us concerning conceptions and practices, but we have some common points, we have some common visions. And our challenge is to build on these common beliefs and these common goals related to the promotion of a sustainable planet to a health equity. And we are facing very powerful forces that has led the world to the crisis it is in now. So the challenge is to make our voices heard. It's unbelievable that so many smart people, as you have in these networks, and all the millions of people that we represent, from scientists, health professionals, community leaders. So we need to find a way to change the game. That's not a need, that's an ethical challenge, but also is a political challenge. And we are able to do so. We are able to face the challenge, to face the threats the world is facing now, and to build a better world. So I'm very happy to be all together to discuss how to go on, how to fight for a better, a fairer world. This statement, of course, it's open to support, to signatures, but we'd like very much that this is, if it's able to represent our common points, our common beliefs, our common goals, we'd like to be supported, signed by all the organizations, and more importantly, that these statements were spread in a way that every member of our network, I'm speaking by the World Federation of Public Health Associations. We have 130 national associations affiliated. These national associations have more than 5 million people associated in the different countries: US, China, Brazil, European countries, African countries, other Asian countries, Australia, all over the world. If we are able to make this statement, we reach each one of our associated members, no doubt it will have it will be much stronger when it reaches their hands of the leaders of the countries, of the leaders of the international organizations, the multilateral organizations. So if each one of our organizations is able to spread this word, to spread this statement, no doubt we can make a step forward. So as concluding remarks of this session, I'd like to thank you very much, the presence of all of you, to thank you the presence, the very good work of Andre, Lara, and Guto, who are supporting not just our assembly, but all the working of the SHEM. To thank you the support of the Oswaldo Cruz Foundation has been a very, very strong support to allow the functioning of the SHEM. And I apologize if you have the time, if you're not on time, we've got some minutes more than planned, but very happy to have this assembly. I think this makes SHEM stronger. We had a last point, a last item in the agenda. That's the planning for the next year. But considering the time, I will suggest that let this point to be discussed in the next meeting of the steering committee. So I open the floor for the few next minutes. If someone would like to make some comments and like to say something, already thank you for you. So the floor is open for anyone who would like to make a very short but final comment. If not, again, thank you very much for our partners, our invitees, Nicoleta, Marie, very insightful comments. We hope it's just one moment of collaboration that we'll be together in the near and the next future. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being present at the General Assembly of the Sustainable Health Equity. See you.